even just yesterday, over it was a couple weeks ago, and then again just yesterday, more details have leaked out of the extents to which the Chinese government suppressed all information about the virus back in like December and January, when it was starting to break out in Wuhan. There's so many levels where even if you imagine that it came from a bat, that still nonetheless there was so many levels where China allowed it to escape to the world when they could have much more easily contained it.
They knew about it in
uh,
January. I think they released it. Look at how it's benefited them. Look at what happened to
yeah.
us.
Do you
That's all
see
I'm going to
this
say.
footage coming
Strategic
from
and
Wuhan? Do you see this footage coming from Wuhan this past week of all these raves and nightclub dance parties they're having with no masks, no social distancing?
yep.
Meanwhile, here in Europe, they're saying, "Oh, we might have lockdowns for 2 more years, and you can't have Christmas, and can't visit your grandparents when they're dying, and all this, madness."
Did you see the video
Something.
quality of those videos in Wuhan? All
What
that
about him?
video quality was really good of those parties in Wuhan.
No matter what
Yeah.
we can do to salvage life in this country, we will never be like rid of the stain that this energy has created here. So now
We
everyone's all
printed like $8 trillion in the past year.
that's all happening in the
You hear
background.
that?
Yes, we're hyperinflating as we speak, but this
Yeah.
whole like cultural this cultural imprint that COVID is something like, it brought that whole like I'm a hypochondriac or I'm a Munchausen or whatever. It brought that whole
Yeah.
state of mind into a state of virtue. So now the whole
Yep.
country
Yep.
is actually seeing it as virtue to be as hyper aware and germophobic as you could possibly be. And there's
Yeah.
no end to that energy if we don't contain it quick. The direction that we're heading, especially like with the medical dictatorship, like this whole thing that's happening where it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do? It's just like they're trying to keep us healthy. You know what I mean? And that's like everyone's excuse to even allow our Republican like senators and governors and so on and so forth to allow draconian lockdown orders and mask orders. This is like way outside the realm of constitutionality. It's out of the realm, dude.
They
So
always need
we're
some.
going too far. And if we don't like curtail it soon, it's going to be something we can't reverse. And now like people are worked into a culture of being scared about being near other human beings.
Imagine developing as a child during this time. I mean, there are kids who are now have there's probably a phobia term for it, but they're afraid of other people, in crowds and being close to people, because that's what they're not getting the facial cues. So much of developing emotionally and psychologically is reading faces, and they're not getting that, too, with strangers, at least, and public and you see all these horrific freaking images of these schools in the US and UK where they separate all the kids at the tables and the playtime, and they're like 10 feet apart. It's sadistic how this is normalized. I mean, again, it's back to how stark, this divergences of people who are, empathic or empathetic, and people who just like don't see anything wrong with it and just want to follow orders. And in the past century, we've had 100 million people killed, by forms of socialism from their own states, and more than that if you include ethnic or nationalistic socialism like fascism and Nazism. And it's every single one of these genocides, all of these massive things where 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 20 million people were slaughtered or starved to death. None of those happen because people decided that they wanted to be evil and put half the country in concentration camps or gulags, it was always in the name of equality, in the name of the working man, the proletariat, or the fighting some kind of evil. They always had some virtue reason to do it. And so now they tried that with global warming, but it just like wasn't panning out enough, not fast enough at least. So that's why this, a pandemic is the perfect thing, apparently, to get people to line up for totalitarianism. Yeah, the conditioning, like, I've been such a open for so long, since the 90s, expecting like a great awakening that was like just everyone simultaneously waking up. I didn't really suspect that there would be this simultaneously anti-awakening force happening at the same time so much. But just being such a optimist, and in terms of the internet and technology, and freeing everyone, but there's so much truth to how useful it is at the same time at conditioning and controlling people, this multimedia environment.
When it was down to like texts in books, like the Gutenberg press, and even before that, you know what I mean, all time is about like what impressions we can make on each other's brains. We have this forward thinking way of enlisting what technology we're capable of as a species. But at the same time, every positive thing that we create has a negative capability, like an evil twin that is supplanted at all times. And
Right.
Same thing with like splitting the atom, creating the atom bomb, and then creating nuclear energy, which has changed fundamentally the way that we produce energy.
It's every single technology all the way back to fire. Couldn't cook your food or burn you, or the knife, the spearhead, the hand axe, like, I mean, a knife in the hands of a surgeon is different from the knife in the hands of a killer, which is different from the knife in the hands of a chef. It's the same tool, but like you said, there's completely polar abilities to wield that technology. Same with psychedelics, is you could say is also a form of technology in a way. That for how beatific and grand and glorious the visions can be, and how healing they can be equally as destructive, not just to the individual, but also in a weaponized sense, in a witchcraft and brujeria sense. And that's the thing with technology too, like I feel like I've always acknowledged that, but I guess I did not really contemplate it deep enough, because of just like thinking about, how again, utopian, techno utopian, futuristic, how it's going to liberate us, all the peer-to-peer decentralized networks, how it's just going to create all of this good, in freeing people and enlightening people. But there really is this equally, this equal opposite aspect to it, which is getting, I guess, it's not just, the indoctrination is not just coming at you, from the government school class or at home when you're in front of your TV or radio, but now it's just like, in your pocket and everywhere. And it's this like networked, a decentralized form of mind control.
Dude, I saw a tweet today from Swalwell where he was like, there's no point to wear a mask. And there's even footage of Fauci saying there's nothing a mask can do for you. So really, what is the point of the mask? I feel like it's more ritualistic at this point. I'm really at that point now where it's just like a ritualistic.
The veil where they cover the mouth and nose of women in the Middle East, that was a tribal tradition that started centuries before Islam. And because it has these psychological effects, like it's as a way to subdue and control a portion, what people who do it, so there is this possibility that there's, like it just serves their purpose all that much more. This matte faceless to take away, again, what are we talking about? Collectivism versus individuality. When we're talking about the left versus right, well, this takes away your individualism. Your individuality is to make us all like the same. Like there's that Facebook meme where it's like all the new emojis where it's like angry, sad, laughing, frustrated, and they're all like identical, all the different emotions.
Well, it has no logical basis, and that's the whole thing. Is like, at this point, we all know and I think some politician came out recently saying that it was Rand Paul. I think that the mask is 100% about control because it's not stopping any pandemics. Like the top pandemic guy said that from the get, and it's like that's based on his 70 years or however long he's fucking been leeching off of us, as a public health expert, right? And now within the past month, we've learned that now, no, actually, a fucking rag, some underwear that 5 people farted into, is just fine to put over your face, and it will protect you from a virus. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe for a second it's anything more than a control mechanism, and also, like you're saying, a way to condition us to lose our humanity, because that's the biggest thing that I recognize is that I don't see smiles anymore. I don't get to smile at people and signal to people like I am your brother, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That kind of camaraderie is now gone from civilization, because everywhere in public we go, we have to be covered. And then it plays into this whole like, oh, well, I'm going to bring in my whole like Antifa gang and everyone's all in mask. And like, remember how before it was like, oh, if you're going out representing your cause, wearing a mask, you're a scumbag because you don't want your face seen. Now it's a fucking virtue to wear a mask while going and representing your cause, because you're trying to save people's lives.
Trump said this. He said, at what point is the cure worse than what's happening? And it's
He's been
clearly
saying
the cure is worse than what's happening. And what Anomaly has said, and he doesn't like the fact that Trump has attached himself to this vaccine, and I don't either.
Sure.
I don't either. I think he had to almost, and this is just my opinion, he had to almost attach himself with that, or else like the normies who were kind of conservative would be like, oh my God, this guy's just anti-vax, when in fact he was being completely correct the whole time.
Yeah.
Same reason why he had to distance himself from RFK, perhaps. If it were me, I would just fucking be like, nah, dude, like, I agree with this dude. My son has fucking partial autism. Like, I'm like 100% about checking out these fucking vaccine people, and they're making all this money and shit. And like, what's the deal? But at the same time, this guy has a lot more people behind him that understand strategy and political posturing than I would, or than Anomaly would. And so perhaps there's something bigger happening. And, that's the big question that's been asked is, to what extent is that cowardice, and to what extent is that strategy? And I think that the next few days, next few weeks is going to kind of elucidate that a bit more for us. I will not be taking any vaccines. Like there will be no COVID-19 vaccine injected into my body. Like that is a firm belief of mine. It is my body and my choice.
It's an RNA vaccine. And they're now telling people that if you get the vaccine, you can still get it. You're just less likely to get it.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean? Why is this mandatory then? In a 99% survival rate. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. And that's the camp I'm in.
Here in Massachusetts, we just legalized abortion up to like 9 months. And if that's going to be the case, and there's my body, my choice in that arena, which is like way like that's some serious my body, my choice shit. You know what I mean? That's like freebasing it. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, then I am definitely not going to be forced into a fucking vaccine. But the way that they're going to put it is it's all going to be corporate. Like, you can't go into this store, you can't go into that store. You have to have a vaccine certificate to do this and that.
Airline. You can't ride this airline. You can't use this credit card. Yeah.
Right. That's the way it's going to happen. And now, like, the government is outsourcing its directives.
The thing that so from the beginning, I always suspected that it was came from their coronavirus research labs, that it was engineered, that they have been doing these what's it called, proof of function or whatever, studies on it. But I was often skeptical about whether it was intentionally released, like that, whether it just escaped, as a virus can easily do. But the thing that, in more recently though, when I think back, the thing that really makes me more suspicious that this was a plot, that it was intentionally released, was all those videos coming from Wuhan and China of people collapsing on the street and convulsing and foaming at the mouth and all this shit that were all coming out of China to scare people, because it's like, then I can rationalize it. At first I was like, well, if they're going to release something, why wouldn't they release a real deadly one or something? But well, it makes sense. Maybe they don't want to kill a quarter of the population, but if they do, it needs to be real, real enough. But how can they gin up all the fear, and everything? And that, so that was never explained. All those videos, those staged videos, we know now, obviously that's not what the virus does. They were staged, but why? Why at that time? So that's why it really does make me lend more credence to the idea.
You're hitting the nail on the head, dude. That's what I thought. They literally had people convulsing on the street, passing out.
Yeah.
With all great videography on them. That doesn't happen.
Sending, China blocked travel in to their country, even though they were infected, but they were sending flights out constantly. They have this whole thing in northern Italy where there's all this Chinese exchange workers program, and so they just continued sending flights and flights of Chinese people straight from Wuhan to Italy, which is where then the next epicenter broke.
When Nancy Pelosi, when this whole thing was breaking out, and she did the Chinatown tour, that was hilarious. And Trump shut down the border with China, and everyone was calling him racist.